Lindsay was so fun-loving, and when she was on her happy high, she was so much fun, and she had such a following of people. One of the things that, other than lack of sleep, I always wondered why she was always so tired, but the demons usually come at night when you're alone, and, she had to fight her brain. She used to really like different sayings. She'd write, inspirational things all over her furniture and notebooks, and she was easily inspired by them. But you look back, and I think that obviously was a cry for help back then.
Oh, and a full year, and that lets you save True
Form Life.
Green look on.
Welcome to Exploring Mind and Body with Drew Tadia. Drew is an expert in nutrition, fitness, lifestyle, and more. And he wants to help you live a healthier, longer, and more active life. Now here's your host, Drew Tadia.
All right, welcome to another edition of Exploring Mind and Body. Thank you so much for being here and tuning in and being a part of the show, being a part of our community, and tuning in each week or throughout the week to whatever we may have going on. Today's a bit more of a serious subject. Could be at least one of my most challenging interviews because of the emotion and because of the serious subject that it is. I've brought on Rick Moore, who lost his daughter to suicide. And if you have any experience at all with suicide, even depression, you know how challenging it can be. I think it starts with depression and then leads into a number of other areas. And then probably the worst thing that could happen is the suicide. Again, it's a tough subject to talk about. I want to thank Rick so much for coming on and being strong enough to share with us. For those that have suicidal thoughts or those that have other types of mental illness, I know it feels like you're very much alone. And I hope you get out of this show that you're not alone, and there is help, and there are people like Rick fighting the good fight for you. And I hope you consider reaching out, whether you're a parent and you have children going through this, or whether you're going through this yourself. Again, you're not alone, and I certainly hope you get something out of this interview. And again, I want to thank Rick for coming on. I know it was tough for him. Some of the questions were a bit challenging for me to ask as well, but it's a great interview, and there's lots and lots to take out of it. So I hope you get a chance to listen. I hope you get a chance to share this with your friends or family, because there's a very, very good chance that someone in your life is dealing with suicidal thoughts or mental illness that we don't even know about. So let's get into it.
This is Exploring Mind and Body. Naturally improve your lifestyle one show at a time with your host, Drew Tadia.
All right, welcome to another edition of Exploring Mind and Body. Heard all about Rick in the introduction, so without further ado, welcome to the show, Rick.
Thanks, Drew. Good to be on.
Yeah, it's our pleasure. I want to thank you for coming on and sharing your story here with us before we get started. I know it's a difficult subject to talk about. Rick, there's a challenge, and it maybe even growing, or maybe there's just more awareness around it. I'm not sure, but I think we're going to get some answers today from you through your experiences. Tell us why you're here, and I guess how can we get started with hearing more about your story?
Well, I guess how I can start, Drew, is telling you how myself and my family were thrust into the depression and mental health side of things. I've been blessed with 4 great children, 2 sons and 2 daughters, and my youngest daughter, Lindsay, took her life in September 20th of 2015, and she suffered from depression, which we really weren't aware about until 5 months prior that she took her life. So we've been sent down a road that obviously no parent or sister or brother would ever want to go down. So I've spent the last 2 years, just over 2 years, trying to surround myself and find out what would make my daughter, who had what perceived to be a perfect life, perfect family. What would get her to a position where she'd take what I say heaven over earth? So, and you mentioned, Drew, that is this increasing, or is it because we're more aware? I truly believe in what we've been doing, that it's not because of communicating. It is definitely increasing. Statistics show that, and it's really turning into, almost epidemic proportions.
And do you know why, or have any idea why it might be increasing?
Well, I'm just going to back up a little bit. Before we knew Lindsay was suffering all through high school, she had 3 of her classmates and friends took their life. And I remember Lindsay coming to me, and she would have been, I guess, 19 at the time, in around there. And she said, "Dad, this is crazy. I want to do something about these suicides." And this is before I knew she was, suffering from it at the time. And I said, well, 19-year-old, it's tough to make an impact at school. And I was, I look back now and regret my answer there, but I said, it's tough for you to, on this topic, to do a lot, but I can see you're hurting and things like that. So she was reaching out. It's one of the signals. I was reaching out, but after the death, we said, why was there, in Red Deer, there was a rash of suicides, and we looked back and we kind of, Cindy, my wife Cindy, and I said, what are the things that we thought kind of got Lindsay into this, funk kind of thing. And we kind of looked at, Lindsay was she, like many of the teens, she lived on her cell phone. That's kind of, the 2011 when they came in strong, and, all the kids had them, and they're living on social media. So she didn't get her sleep. She was she slept with the phone by her bed, and we started looking at, is that coincidental, or could that have contributed to what's happening in our youth? And I truly believe that the new world with the social media, it's got a lot to do with what our youth are battling right now.
And is that from just what they're seeing on a regular basis, or that's being, I'm not sure if this is the word, unengaged with society, or with reality?
It does change the way they're doing. It's proven that they're feeling more lonely, even though which is weird because they're more engaged. They're lacking sleep because of it. The old days of, I don't want to date myself or anything, but when you got together with friends and laughed and got together, there was no perfection there. You just had fun. Nowadays, you got to look like a 10 and beautiful all the time, and if you're not, it's spread all across social media, and so all of a sudden you've got these teens that if you're not perfect, you're falling behind. And I really think the emotion is lacking in communication nowadays for them. As you know, if you email someone or text, or emotions, 90-some% visual, and that's lacking. So communication's taken wrong, and the children are getting put on an island for some reason, and it's. I think we really have to take a good look at the statistics that come out from. I know there's been studies, from when the cell phones all started. I do a lot of talks at schools, and I was absolutely amazed that parents are sending their grade 1 and 2, they've got cell phones.
Oh my gosh!
To me, it's ludicrous, and they're allowed. Your parents are thinking there's safety because their child's a call away, but when they got cell phones at that age, they have access to things that there's no way they should have access to. And bullying's just another a part of that now, and bullying's before bullying happened at schools, I mean, at least when you left school, it was done and you got home, but now it's 24/7 that the bullies are bothering people. And I mean, they have their own issues. They're bullies for a reason too, right? So we have to, there's a lot of complexities to mental health. There's so many layers. But I think that accountability has to, I spoke at a high school and told our story, a high school that Lindsay attended, and they had 1,700 students there. And before I went out and spoke, the principal said, there's a student has been following our Facebook page, Smiles Thru Lindsey, and she'd really like to talk to you before you go out. And I said, you bet. So my daughter Stephanie and we found a room, and we went in with this girl, and we said, how are you doing? And she goes, well, not too bad. And she said, I just want to say from my mom, thank you for what you're doing. And I said, from your mom? And she goes, yeah. She says, it's amazing what you're doing with Smiles Thru Lindsey. And I said, well, how are you doing? And she was a cutter. She'd tried 4 times to take her life. And she says, I'm getting bullied on social media, on Facebook. And these people are kind of aware that she's probably struggling, but yet, so when I went out, I was really angry, just the reality of this girl who didn't have support from her father, just her mother, and then she had people bullying her.
Did you see any, looking back, was there any signs that you maybe thought you should have seen or could have seen if you had more knowledge around the subject?
Yeah, that's a really good question, because you obviously will look back. And, Lindsay was so fun-loving, and when she was on her happy high, she was so much fun, and she had such a following of people. One of the things that, other than lack of sleep, I always wondered why she was always so tired, but the demons usually come at night when you're alone, and, she had to fight her brain. She used to really like different sayings. She'd write, inspirational things all over her furniture and notebooks, and she was easily inspired by them. But you look back, and I think that obviously was a cry for help back then. And I remember she went to Italy for 4 months with her best friend, and she'd mailed a piece back to us, and again, we didn't know at that time, and it was a letter to us, and it kind of reminisced how, specific things like, I remember you taking us as kids to Disneyland when we didn't have a lot of money, and we love you. I love you for what you're doing. Like, you read this letter now, and it's hard. It was a cry back then, and we just looked at it as a daughter that loved us,
And then for like those inspirational quotes that she wrote around the furniture, her house, or probably scribbled on her notebooks, is that, do you think that was something that was another sign that she was struggling, so she needed to surround herself with something like that?
Yeah, I totally believe that, for sure. Yeah. And then she wrote sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm just going to take it a different direction, but if you have something to add, I'd like to hear it.
Well, we talk about the what ifs in life, and Lindsay had lived with us down. She had a bedroom downstairs, and she'd moved out with 4 other friends the early part of in January, and she pretty well cleared out her room, but not 100%. But teenagers are. I call her teenager, but she was 22. But the day before the funeral, her best friend offered to do the eulogy, and she wanted us to read it. And she came over to our house, and she went down to Lindsay's room for the last time, kind of thing. And she kind of opened the door, and there was a notebook with words on it, and that Lindsay had put there, I think, about 2 weeks prior when she'd come by our house to visit, and we weren't home, because she even wrote a little message on the chalkboard. It said, "Sorry, I missed you," with a heart. And I read this. I didn't bring it today, but I read this letter sometime when I speak, because it wasn't a suicide note, but it was a note that I think if we found when it was written, that more could have been done, right? The reality was there, and it talked about her. She called herself a coward for not, taking her life. She said, "I'm too much of a coward to do it," and she talked about the pain of no one taking her serious, because when she told us in December of 2014, I was in the basement, and Lindsay came down at 1 a.m, and she was crying. I said, "What's the problem?" And she goes, "Dad, something's wrong with me." And I said, what do you mean?" And she said, "I've tried to kill myself twice." And I went, "What?" Like, first time ever. And I said, "What are you talking about?" And she goes, "Yeah, I don't know why I'm like this. I get, down." And so I said, "Well, I remember telling my Cindy in the morning, and we said, we're going to get you help, honey." So one of Cindy's co-workers said, "You try this one agency," and so we sent Lindsay off to this agency, and she came back that afternoon, and I said, "How did it go?" And she was crying again. I go, "Well, what's the problem?" She goes, "Well, the first thing they asked me is, how are you going to pay for this?" And then they sloughed it off as she's just going through, teenage stuff and whatever. And she was even originally diagnosed by her doctors going through a phase, and it's because they tend to hide the fact, because of the stigmas, that they do it very well. Lindsay did it very well. Like, so many people were shocked because they saw this beautiful, vibrant, seemed to have everything going for him, and yet she hid this evil for so well. It's embarrassing. And I bring the one thing up about the stigma, because when we even found out in January 2015 that she suffered from depression, as a family, we even kept it quiet. We didn't tell our immediate family. It was almost like a shame kind of thing, and that's what one of the reasons that I do speak and we're open about the suicide, that we've got to squash this stigma. It's it just makes them alone and embarrassed.
Sometimes the show once a week or even twice a week just isn't enough. So if you want more content, if you want to know more about what we're doing at True Form Life, you can find us on Facebook. We're on there posting at least twice a day, in the morning and the evening. That's at facebook.com/trueformlife. Or on Instagram. That's kind of my favorite platform. I like to post my food pictures and some of the activities that I do, maybe hiking or whatever that may be. And that's just at Drew Tadia on Instagram, and then Twitter as well. That's at True Form Life. So we're highly active. We'd love to connect with you. So find us on your social media platform and let us know how you're enjoying our show. And then what is that like for you guys? Like, do you guys struggle with depression yourselves?
No, not at all. Well, I mean, when I talk, I've cried every day for, at one time. For the last 2 years, you never know how it hits you, that all of a sudden you go, "Yeah, she is gone." And I think our family's very close, and we do communicate, because that's a big impact to our two brothers, and especially your sister, Steph. And we make sure they're doing okay. We're open about it. We talk about it. It's still hard. I can't see videos of Lindsay yet. It's tough enough to see stills of her, pictures, but it doesn't get easier. You just learn to cope with it. And I think, I know my medicine for this is the foundation, and it is raising the money to through Lindsay's legacy, because I know Lindsay loved helping people. So I'm going to carry her torch on, and that's as a father, that is my medicine. When I get messaging through the Facebook page, personal messaging, and that are pretty gratifying. That they say it's because of us or what Lindsay, that they're alive to say I got help or I told my parents, or it's pretty gratifying that you are making a difference. And I think that's what it does get emotional each time, but for me, I slap myself in the face because it's half of what Lindsay had to go through, right? So I truck on, and that's my medicine for it.
Rick, just before we wrap things up here, can you tell us about the foundation that you have going on, or maybe where people can go if they're having some issues?
Yeah, so it's through the Red Deer District Community Foundation, and it's an endowment fund, self-directed endowment fund that Cindy and I are mandated to give monies to mental health and depression in youth. So the funds raised, it goes on to perpetuity because it works off the interest. We direct funds, like I said, we gave $10,000 to the Catholic school and $10,000 to the public school. We've raised about $250,000 so far. The businesses in Red Deer and area, Olds is another fantastic resource for us. That these businesses just come up with fundraising, and we try to attend all of them just for the impact part of it. And it's just, we thought it would weaken by now, Drew, but it's people are really focusing on mental health right now. So as much as the money's important, the stigma part is very important also. So people can donate to Smiles Thru Lindsey, and it's Thru is THRU and Lindsey is EY. They can send a check to the Red Deer District Community Foundation for Smiles Thru Lindsey, and that certainly will be ongoing well after Cindy and I leave this earth, and our kids can take over the foundation, and it'll never be depleted. It'll always get stronger, and Lindsay's name will always be there. And I never diagnose anyone. Like I do get lots of messaging through the Facebook page, the private messaging, and people going, what do I do? And one of the important things is, and our medical people have to wake up a little on this too, and is a proper diagnosis. And number one, you are suffering from depression or anxieties or whatever the levels are. And it's, that's why I battle on the healthcare issue through the government. There's not a lot of resources. It's not like you can get in right away, and the people are getting diagnosed through emergency, or it's just so I don't know. Common sense leaves me sometime when you just can't see the billions it's costing our society that we're not, taking this head on. It's a serious situation. It's not going to get better unless we truly integrate our services and saying it's okay. It's okay to not feel 100%. Let's help people. And the conversation's so big, and it's, I had a friend that said, my daughter's got it, don't tell anyone. And I said, no, that's the wrong attitude. You tell people. Don't be ashamed. And I think that's how we're going to help this next generation. And as a baby boomer, we blew it, really. We've allowed this to happen for years. And unfortunately, even for me, it took a tragedy for me to get involved and Cindy to get involved. And but I'm not going to give up, and our youth deserve better. There was a documentary done by a local film producer, and it went to the Central Alberta Film Festival, and it's called Are You Listening? And it's on YouTube. It's a 25-minute documentary. It's got local teen actors, and then it's got some live thing with myself and the priest that did the funeral, and Dr. Swan, from MLA in Calgary, and things like that. And So you can go on YouTube, and it's Cash Production, CACHE, and it's I mean, it's very emotional. We when it premiered in Red Deer, we all went as a family because, number one, you want to see how people react, and sometimes there isn't a dry eye in the house, but right away people started talking after the movie, and that, to me, that's the impactful thing. It gets people to understand and to talk about it, and I'm so pleased that I really like it to go in schools, the high schools and stuff, that people can see this real story that unfolded.
Well, we'll link it to the blog, or the blog post that this audio will be on.
Okay.
And then I'll be happy to check it out or search for it and then share it on social media, and have newsletters and such as well.
That's awesome.
So,
well, it was totally a pleasure. It was a pleasure meeting you, Drew, and good things come out. Like, I was just going out to Olds there, and I got to meet you, and it's important for the media. The media has the power to do the right thing, and I always thank you all for carrying the message.
It's our pleasure, Rick. Thank you so much for coming on.
True Form Life.
All right, that's going to wrap things up for this edition of Exploring Mind and Body. Once again, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for tuning in till the end here. I know this is a difficult subject to hear, difficult subject to talk about. My apologies for not being excited here. I always try to bring energy to the show, and I think that it brings back so much. There's so much emotions. There's so much. Brings back so many memories. I think we all struggle. We've all struggled. We all continue to struggle, and at different levels. And I want you guys to know that you're not alone. Whether you're a parent, whether you're a student, whether you're a friend or family member, there's so much out there now for help. I mean, I know there's people out there like Rick, and there's other people trying to raise awareness around mental illness, depression, suicide. And I think that if we work together and share this interview, go to Lindsay's page and pay attention to what's going on. I was just on there doing some research and seeing what they have going on there. Share some of those posts, talk about it. It's so important to let people know that you're not like this monstrosity. You're not like someone that's completely out to lunch, or you're not made for this world or this planet. There's so many of us that feel like we're alone and we can't reach out to anyone, and it's just not the case. There's people out there that want to help, and there's people that can help. So if you have any issues at all, if you need to talk to someone, there's a lot of people out there. I'd be more than happy to talk to you if you'd like to reach out to me, and if there's any way I can help, please let me know. I was just looking up on this website here, suicideprevention.ca. That's if you're in Canada. And I was reading a book, it was interesting. I'm reading a book by Tim Ferriss, and many people know him as a very successful entrepreneur. And it just happened yesterday, not on purpose, that I was reading his book, Tools of the Titans, by the way. And he talks about how he went through a suicidal stage himself when he was trying to graduate through Princeton. And some people might say, big troubles for Ivy League schools. But I think Princeton and Harvard are some of the top schools in the nation that have the highest suicide rates. And those you would consider some of the most successful people in the world, or the most successful people that move on to high paid positions. And that doesn't mean they're happy. And that doesn't mean that we're happy because we come from money or because we have a loving family. It's a lot of different things that go on within our head, within our mind. And without having the ability to share that or express that or talk to someone that might be more rational just within that moment, I really think it's the small things that make the big difference. And in this case, tragedies. It could be just an instant, or it could be a lifelong demons that you're dealing with, like Rick was talking about with Lindsay. That may be the case. So I'm going to leave you with that. I want to thank you so much for being here. Please consider sharing this with your friends. Talk about this openly. All past shows are going up on exploringmindandbody.com. If you'd like to listen to any past shows, we do have a free app available on any Apple device. And our main website is trueformlife.com. That's where we do most of our meal planning, recipes, grocery shopping lists, fitness routines, and more to help keep you strong and healthy mentally as well. That's it. That's all I got. I'm out of here. As always, I'm your host, Drew Tadia. in health and fitness for a better world. Thanks for listening.
You've been listening to Exploring Mind and Body with Trueform Life's Drew Tadia, fitness expert. To find out more about the show, Drew Tadia, or to listen to past shows, visit exploringmindandbody.com.